The Lynn family massacre is a tragic and haunting chapter in Australian history, representing not just a brutal crime, but also a devastating betrayal. This case left an indelible mark on the close-knit North Epping community, shattering its peace and sending shockwaves nationwide. On July 18, 2009, what began as a seemingly ordinary day unraveled into a nightmare. An entire family was discovered brutally slain within their own home, and the community was left grappling with grief, confusion, and anger. This story goes beyond a simple act of violence. It's a tale of hidden resentments, dark secrets, and family bonds twisted by jealousy and obsession. The investigation that followed uncovered a web of motives, making this massacre one of the most horrifying and complex cases in the country's criminal history. Today, we dive into the details of that dark day and the painful aftermath that followed. But before we begin, if you're interested in true crime and want to hear more cases like this, make sure to subscribe to stay updated on all our deep dives. On the morning of July 18th, Kathy Lynn, accompanied by her husband Robert, made her way to the home of her brother, 45-year-old Norman Min Lynn. What she encountered inside would be forever etched in her memory. As she stepped inside, she was confronted by the lifeless bodies of Norman and his family members, each one bludgeoned to death in a seemingly senseless act of violence. Among the dead were Norman, his wife Lily, Lily's sister Irene, and the Lynn couple's two young sons, Henry and Terry. It was a gruesome, heartbreaking scene. Blood was spattered across the rooms, and the extent of the injuries was so severe that authorities would later struggle to officially confirm each victim's identity without forensic analysis. The only family member spared from this horrific assault was Norman's daughter, Brenda, who happened to be away on a school-sponsored trip. The discovery left Kathy and Robert in a state of utter shock and devastation. Having just dined with the Lynn family the previous evening, they could scarcely believe that such brutal violence had taken place overnight. Kathy's frantic call to emergency services captured her confusion and distress, as she struggled to communicate the horror she had stumbled upon. She was barely able to articulate what she had seen, speaking both in English and Cantonese, and the trauma of witnessing such carnage left her practically incoherent. The Lynn family was a respected and well-loved presence in North Epping. Originally from mainland China, Norman and Lily had moved to Australia in the early 1990s, hoping to build a new life. Their journey began at the University of Sydney, where they met and soon discovered a deep bond. United by similar values and a shared immigrant experience, they quickly fell in love, eventually marrying and building a family in their adopted home. Settling in North Epping, the Lynns established a modest but successful news publication business. Their company grew steadily over the years, ultimately achieving impressive financial success, with earnings reaching up to $1 million annually. This success not only afforded them a comfortable lifestyle, but also earned them the respect and admiration of their community. Friends and neighbors described them as a close-knit, happy family who genuinely cared for those around them. The couple even opened their home to Lily's sister Irene, who became a permanent part of the household. The family's generosity extended beyond their immediate circle. Their home was often a gathering place for relatives, and they welcomed visits from family members, including Kathy and Robert, who were frequent guests. The Lynns were, by all accounts, living the Australian dream, until it was all torn away in a single night of unimaginable violence. Among those closest to the Lynns was Robert C., Lily's brother-in-law. At first glance, Z appeared to be a devoted family member, supporting the Lynn family as they achieved success in their personal and professional lives. However, there was a darker side to Z's relationship with the family, one marked by jealousy and resentment. In China, Z had been a highly respected ENT surgeon, but upon moving to Australia, he struggled to find similar success. After facing challenges in the medical field, he attempted to open a restaurant, hoping it would provide both financial stability and personal satisfaction. Unfortunately, the restaurant venture failed, and the ensuing financial stress only deepened his feelings of inadequacy. Watching his brother-in-law Norman thrive, both in business and in the community, seemed to trigger feelings of envy and bitterness in Zai. These complex emotions set the stage for a tragic turn of events. C's outward support masked a deeper animosity, and as the investigation would reveal, he held disturbing intentions toward the Lin family. His repressed anger and frustration would soon spiral into something dark and terrifying, with consequences that no one could have foreseen. As investigators began piecing together the details of this horrific crime, they delved deeper into the family's history, relationships, and interactions. From the outset, one thing was clear. This was not a random attack. The brutality of the murders indicated a deeply personal motive, and the absence of forced entry suggested that the killer likely had access to the house. With no valuables stolen and no evidence of external intrusion, authorities focused their attention on those closest to the Lin family. Robert Sy, Kathy's husband and Norman's brother-in-law, quickly became a person of interest. Investigators discovered that despite the closeness he exhibited on the surface, Z harbored intense jealousy toward Norman. Financially, the Lin family was thriving, while Z was grappling with the harsh realities of unfulfilled dreams. His failed restaurant venture, combined with a perceived loss of status since leaving his medical career in China, contributed to a profound sense of resentment and bitterness. This once respected surgeon had become a struggling immigrant who, in his own eyes, paled in comparison to Norman's success. However, resentment alone did not explain the sheer violence inflicted on the family. Investigators soon uncovered another disturbing layer to Z's character, a dark obsession with his 15-year-old niece, Brenda. Although Brenda was unaware of this at the time, police found evidence suggesting that Z had a perverse fascination with her, one that had been growing over time. It was even speculated that Z had orchestrated the murders while Brenda was away to spare her life, leaving her as a possible victim of his twisted intentions later on. When authorities arrived at the Lin residence, the scene was nothing short of nightmarish. Every victim had been bludgeoned with such force that their identities had to be confirmed through forensic analysis. The severity of the injuries suggested a weapon like a hammer, wielded with relentless brutality. In the boys' room, Henry and Terry lay side by side, bearing the marks of a horrifying assault, while Norman and his wife Lily were found in their own room alongside Irene, each as violently attacked as the children. The police noticed something unusual. Brenda's room was completely undisturbed, her belongings untouched, and her door closed, indicating that the killer had no intention of harming her. This pointed to a chilling possibility that whoever committed this atrocity cared deeply for Brenda and knew she would be away on a school trip at the time. Furthermore, analysis of the crime scene revealed a series of bloody footprints leading from room to room, with all footprints matching the same size and pattern, suggesting a single perpetrator. The crime scene offered additional clues that would later implicate C. Investigators found no signs of a break-in, meaning the killer likely had a key or was familiar with the property. Furthermore, the power had been switched off at the circuit breaker in the basement, suggesting premeditation and a detailed knowledge of the home's layout. The careful planning and methodical approach to the murders pointed toward someone with an intense personal motive and the desire to make a statement with their crime. Despite Z's apparent cooperation with the investigation, his behavior raised red flags for detectives. Z showed an unusual detachment from the tragedy, which struck investigators as suspicious. During the initial mourning period, Z made seemingly inappropriate remarks, even talking about buying a new luxury car, a jarring contrast to the grief-stricken family members who had just lost loved ones. His lack of empathy, coupled with an eagerness to gain control of the Lin family's assets, further fueled suspicions. Investigators observed that Z had started making plans to take over the Lin family business and had even requested the keys to the news agency shortly after the murders. This, combined with his insistence on moving into the North Epping home, indicated a strong desire to step into Norman's place. With significant financial assets at stake, including income-generating commercial properties, it became apparent that Z had not only personal but also material motives. His actions painted the picture of a man desperate to assume control of his late brother-in-law's legacy, which gave investigators even more reason to focus on him. As detectives scrutinized Z's every move, they began gathering additional evidence to support their suspicions. The bloody footprints left at the crime scene became a focal point. Forensic experts identified the prints as likely coming from shoes manufactured by a particular brand, AEX, which were traced back to a purchase Z had made in 2005. This detail would later play a pivotal role in establishing his presence at the scene. As the investigation unfolded, authorities unearthed even more disturbing aspects of Z's character, especially his dark obsession with Brenda. Reports suggested that over the years, he had made Brenda feel uncomfortable through physical gestures that were inappropriate and invasive. Brenda recalled instances where he would linger too long while touching her shoulders or legs, his actions leaving her with an uneasy feeling. Although Brenda was too young to fully understand Z's intentions at the time, her discomfort was real, and these experiences became a haunting prelude to the tragedy that would follow. Z's behavior toward Brenda added a grim layer to the unfolding story. The possibility that he saw her as an object of twisted affection painted a disturbing picture of his motives. This revelation shifted the focus of the investigation, as detectives began to view the massacre not only as an act of revenge or jealousy, but also as a means to fulfill an ulterior, perverse goal. This combination of financial, emotional, and psychological motives made Zai the primary suspect, and as the police continued their probe, more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. After months of gathering evidence, including surveillance footage showing Z destroying a shoebox matching the footprint evidence, authorities arrested him in May 2011. During his trial, prosecutors highlighted his complex motives, a mix of envy, financial greed, and a disturbing fixation on Brenda. While much of the evidence was circumstantial, Z's erratic behavior and intent to take over the Lin family's assets painted a clear picture of a man driven by dark desires. The trial was lengthy, spanning multiple attempts due to jury indecision and procedural delays. Finally, in January 2017, a jury convicted C of the Lin family murders, sentencing him to 5 consecutive life sentences without parole. Australia's decision to abolish the death penalty decades earlier meant that C would instead spend his life behind bars, paying for his horrific crimes. The impact of the Lin family massacre endures in Australia's collective memory, a grim reminder of the capacity for betrayal within families. Brenda, the sole survivor, continues to carry the heavy legacy of her family's tragic end, working to rebuild her life despite the trauma she endured. Z's conviction brought a measure of closure, but the shadow cast by this massacre remains, a chilling example of hidden darkness behind seemingly ordinary lives. If you found this story engaging and want to hear more about true crime cases, be sure to subscribe and stay connected with us for future updates. Thank you for watching, and let us know your thoughts on this tragic case in the comments below.